You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday 20th of June 2014. Alleged jihadist reported dead appears in court on terror charges. Women's charity CEO jailed for over 7 years for child abuse offences. Roma migrants cause terror for South Yorkshire residents. Crosses not wanted on German cemetery during Muslim burials. Belgium, Antwerp, Arabs attack a school bus with stones. Farage, Grillo form Eurosceptic group. 168 times released Gitmo detainees returned to terror. Russia is doing it. Russia is actually abandoning the dollar. Iraq, ISIL execute 12 clerics in Mosul. Thought for the day, hatred for nationalism, is it deserved? And finally, 2 for 1 day, Friday. UK news. Alleged jihadist reported dead appears in court on terror charges. Police believe death reports were deliberate to allow Imran Khawaja, who allegedly uses the name Abu Dain al-Britani, to try to return home. Reports of the death of an alleged British jihadist in Syria may have been faked to allow him to slip out of the country. It has emerged. Imran Khawaja is allegedly Abu Daim al-Briton, who was last week said to have died fighting in the civil war. But Khawaja was stopped days later trying to return to the UK and appeared in court on Friday charged with attending a terror training camp and other terrorism offences. The 26-year-old was arrested at Dover along with a second man as they tried to re-enter the UK. World at 8. Stopped. What does that mean? Given a cup of tea and a chat? Deport and brand the man. Do what they would do to us in the same circumstances. Women's charity CEO jailed for over 7 years for child abuse offences. The chief executive of Southwark Muslim Women's Association has been jailed for 7.5 years after being found guilty of sexual abuse against 3 girls under the age of 14. Zafar Iqbal, 67, was sentenced at Woolwich Crown Court yesterday. He will be placed on the sex offenders register indefinitely. World at 8. What good is that? Deport him and his family and save the taxpayers more money. Roma migrants cause terror for South Yorkshire residents. Villagers being terrorised by hundreds of Roma migrants have warned blood will be spilt unless police act. Roma numbers have rocketed in Hexcorp, South Yorkshire, from a handful to more than 500 since border controls were lifted in January. Now angry residents say riots could erupt unless action is taken to curb the fly tipping, late night noise and threats and intimidation. Resident Paul Adams, 44, an advertising account manager, said, "The immigrants don't care about the village or our community. All they are here for is the benefits. They are loud, aggressive and intimidating. They gather in groups in parks and on the streets. They throw rubbish everywhere, literally out of their windows into their garden, in the knowledge the council will clear it up. They need educating in how to be part of a community." World at 8. At last, a community who speaks up and doesn't shut up. Of course, this is what the UAF dread, the roses falling from the glasses of the average Brit. All these people that encourage immigration should be made to live with these people, not nearby, but with them. European news. Crosses not wanted on German cemetery during Muslim burials. Massive clashes between different cultures are a near daily occurrence in Germany as well as in Austria. However, conflicts between Christians and Muslims cause increasing anger amongst the citizens, and for quite a while they have not been willing to accept just about anything. Recently there was such a case in the German town of Offenbach near Frankfurt on Main. After an agreement had been reached between the two cultures, the Muslims demanded still more and more. Now the Muslim community demands that during a Muslim burial all Christian symbols be removed from the entire cemetery grounds. During this procedure, while surahs from the Quran will be read out, all crosses in the mourning hall are to be taken down or hidden away. These demands are made by Bashir Kumchu from the Ahmadiyya community with the explanation: "We are also making adjustments by following the rules of the cemetery administration." World at 8. One great adjustment they could make would be to go back home and carry out their burials in their own lands. Belgium, Antwerp, Arabs attack a school bus with stones. It appears the deteriorating security situation in Israel is serving to encourage Muslims in Europe to attack Jews. A few weeks following the fatal attack in the Jewish Museum in Brussels, a school bus from the Antwerp Talmud Torah was attacked with stones by local Arab residents. World at 8. And so it shall come to pass. Great news for my nationalist-hating Belgian daughter-in-law. Way to go. Farage, Grillo form Eurosceptic group. Nigel Farage, leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party, UKIP, said Wednesday that with 17 members of Italy's five-star movement, M5S, he will form a Eurosceptic group in the European Parliament. M5S leader Beppe Grillo called it a great day for direct democracy. Rules require 25 MEPs from 7 different nationalities must be included to form a group within the European Parliament. "We will be the voice of the people," said Farage, whose group will include 24 British members of the European Parliament, as well as members from Lithuania, France, Sweden, the Czech Republic and Latvia. The Swedish contingent include members elected from a Swedish party that was founded by white supremacists, including a former member of the Waffen-SS. In an apparent change of tack after he pledged to avoid parties on the far right, the UKIP leader also invited a French MEP who was elected for Marine Le Pen's Front National last month to join his pan-European group in the Parliament. UKIP insisted last night that Farage had not broken his word because the 2 Sweden Democrat MEPs, Christina Winberg and Peter Lundgren, were obliged to write a letter to the UKIP leader distancing themselves from their party's past. World at 8. They're still trying to make a man out of Farage under a heavy disguise of nationalism. Oh dear, this man is so far away from true nationalist sentiments it makes me cry, but the EU idiots will love it. World news. 168 times released Gitmo detainees returned to terror. So, what did we, the USA, give up in exchange for the tarnished soldier, Bowie Bergdahl? 5 high-risk Taliban commanders. 2 of the 5 are wanted by the UN and would be tried for war crimes. Mullah Mohammad Fazi, the Taliban Army Chief of Staff, is wanted for allegedly murdering thousands of Shiites. Mullah Nur-Allah Nouri, senior Taliban military commander, is wanted for the same. Taliban Deputy Minister of Intelligence Abdul Haq Wasiq helped the Taliban give al-Qaeda's 9/11 planners intelligence training. Taliban Governor of the Heart Province and former Interior Minister Khairullah Kawar was a point man for Mullah Omar. And Mohammed Nabi held meetings with al-Qaeda to determine attack plans against US targets. This will not work out well. As of September 2012, 168 out of the 602 released Guantanamo Bay detainees are suspected of returning to terrorism. World at 8. I just give up with the American administration. No surrender should be the mantra with terrorists. Russia is doing it. Russia is actually abandoning the dollar. The Russians are actually making a move against the petrodollar. It appears that they are quite serious about their de-dollarization strategy. The largest natural gas producer on the planet, Gazprom, has signed agreements with some of their biggest customers to switch payments for natural gas from US dollars to euros. And Gazprom would have never done this without the full approval of the Russian government, because the Russian government holds a majority stake in Gazprom. There hasn't been a word about this from the big mainstream news networks in the United States, but this is huge. When you're talking about Gazprom, you're talking about a company that is absolutely massive. It is one of the largest companies in the entire world, and it makes up 8% of Russian GDP all by itself. It holds 18% of the natural gas reserves of the entire planet, and it is also a very large oil producer. So for Gazprom to make a move like this is extremely significant. But what Gazprom is doing now has the potential to really shake up the global financial landscape. Iraq. ISIL execute 12 clerics in Mosul. The notorious so-called Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL militants, have executed 12 Sunni clerics in the northern Iraqi city of Mosul, Al-Alam reported. The ISIL terrorists executed 12 Sunni clerics in front of the Al-Isra mosque in Mosul for refusing to take an oath of allegiance to the terror gang, state-run broadcaster Al-Aqraya reported on Saturday. In another incident, ISIL elements executed and dismembered Mosul's central mosque imam, prayer leader, for turning down militants' offer of joining them, local clerics said. The extremist militants from ISIL have captured 2 provincial capitals this week, namely Tikrit in the Salaheddin province and Iraq's second city of Mosul in the northern Nineveh province. According to Iraqi media reports, the district in Salaheddin province has been completely cleared from terrorists. They say dozens of militants were gunned down in an army attack in southern Mosul. Prime Minister al-Maliki has blamed Saudi Arabia and Qatar for a security crisis and growing terrorism in his country, denouncing Riyadh as a major supporter of global terrorism. Thought for the day: hatred for nationalism? Is it deserved? Had a bit of difficulty today in thinking of a singular item which I could comment on, and you would wonder why. Well, this is because for the most of last weekend I was in hospital, unable to contemplate my toes because of a spinal op, so when home, even with copious amounts of painkillers, still felt like I'd done a round with Mike Tyson or Big Daddy and they hadn't held back. But after excellent care from Dale and the boys and several hundred painkillers later, I thought we could not let down our nationalist listeners on a Friday. So balanced on several cushions, here we go. Back to subjects. Well, a lot has happened since the elections, hasn't it? Apparently the Chinese own us all now, so it'll be Mandarin in the classroom, or rather Cantonese, which is the language of the peasants, and our local takeaway will probably take us away en masse for re-education. They also think of England as a failed and old colonial power, which has probably come about from the many stupid and self-serving idiots who have travelled the road to Beijing, Peking for me, toadying up to the new guys on the block with money and forcing Brits to buy often trashy and dangerous Chinese-made goods for the kudos and money for them. Thus, we Brits have made millions of Chinese peasants very rich indeed, so they can buy up our country from afar. So very good government work there, mateys. In fact, a bit of old-fashioned nationalism would have served us better, and we would have saved face. But the one thing that surprises me is the hatred that the man in the street, and indeed members of our own families, can hold for the British National Party. I can understand the ignorant amongst us, which are legion, because they don't want to know and they don't care, past the expletive stage, and we are just there as something to hate and blame for their lifestyles which they don't like and haven't got the gumption to change, but in true Brit tradition expect any and all politicians to do it for them. The one thing about being a nationalist is that there should be no room for doubts. There is no one political party in the world in which a single person agrees with all the manifesto and adores all the members and administration. It simply is not realistic. And it is because of this that people fall away, get disillusioned, turn traitor or entrepreneur as they think they can do it better. But despite all the plethora of mistakes and cock-ups nationalists make, and we do, a nationalist is still a nationalist, and by virtue of being such, of course is classed as a racist. Why? Because in the sheeple's brains, those that have them, they have been weaned on the milk of diversity and the shite of multiracialism from birth. Not by their parents or parent as it is nowadays, but by their early friends, their teachers, their colleagues from further education and their work and social peers. Ditto, these people have also suckled from the same teat, so it is empathy all around. Looking at it from a purist nationalistic viewpoint, we have not only lost England but lost entire generations of our so-called future, all hell-bent on living a Marxist socialist life in all but name. In fact, if ever the Chinese can kill off the Russians and invade the UK, they would probably all be welcomed. After all, we eat Chinese food, innit? And although I'm still rabidly anti-Islam, the two cultures would not live peaceably together at all. The only way East and Middle East are mildly compatible is the attitude towards family and children. Thus, honour thy father and thy mother is truly a force to be reckoned with in both those societies. One from cultural inheritance and the other from a religion. So whether our haters realise it or not, by encouraging massive immigration and trading rights from both cultures and creeds, they are encouraging a change, whether forced or not, on their own previous indoctrinations on family. Karl Marx does not take filial obligations kindly at all, vis-a-vis the Jewish socialist Millipede brothers. Talk about Cain and Abel. The difference between Marxist socialism and National Socialism is a great divide, but one few really even talk about. But I will highlight some differences below. Marriage. Marxist socialism, we don't need it. Nationalist socialism, we do need it. Children. Marxist socialism, property of the state. NS, responsibility of their parents. Divorce. MS, readily available to correct status. NS, available but not encouraged. Abortions. MS, readily available and encouraged. NS, available on medical or social grounds. Education. MS, state orientated and directed. NS, culture, history and religion priorities. Family structures. MS, demolished. NS, must be built up and stabilised for the future. Social structure. MS, demolish and break fresh ground. NS, reconstruct and stabilise. Now there are many more of course, and we are in direct opposition to the insidious form of Frankfurt School of Indoctrination now currently sweeping the country. The scorched earth policy of Karl Marx has been in full flow underground since the fall of the Third Reich, which is seen by many as the twilight of fascism in the world arena and has been encouraged to be so by the Western world and the old world order in subsequent years, to the detriment of society and its people in the UK primarily. Another fact to which our sheeples are completely blind. So nature abhors a vacuum and fills it, as is currently underway. The strange thing is that we as British nationalists have in fact done our job already, and have done it without the help of the people that we've been trying to save. 5 years ago immigration was never ever discussed, let alone outside of a BNP meeting. Now it's everywhere, and I don't mean courtesy of the mirage. You see, in the real world, away from computers, tablets, mobile phones and all the phony crap that goes with it, real people are talking about the state of the nation now, and that is something we have given them. We won't be thanked or acknowledged, but it is down to us, ignored, hated and reviled, that our people can now talk fairly openly amongst themselves about their concerns on that level without being classed as knuckle-dragging racists. Well, not by the informed anyway. Many other subjects are hitting the news now, and the odd thing is that without exception, from halal to Iraq, they are all subjects the British National Party have been discussing for years. So okay, we might not have done it the clever way, the Marxist way, but we've done it our way, and the proof is in the papers every day. So perhaps some long-sighted, unblinkered people might take a long, hard look into the future of the UK and see what it doesn't want to see and seek to change it. They may well choose UKIP, but then as a proper nationalist, even I can see that UKIP is the smallest tip of the smallest iceberg that sank the Titanic. The UK will, however, sink with all hands on board. No, true nationalism is on the rise, and that alone defies the disgusted from Penge, the hand-wringers and the nasties, because all nationalists at heart have their country in mind, and of course by virtue of trying to put one's own tribe first, one is always going to be a dirty racist bastard. That is the true meaning of nationalism, adhering to one's own tribe or people. All other races, creeds and cultures do the same, but under different names. But it is all nationalism. So why is British nationalism so despised when it is so needed? And finally, 2 for 1 Day Friday. The first testicular guard, the cup, was used in hockey in 1874, and the first helmet was used in 1974. That means it took 100 years for men to realise that their brain is also important. Ladies, quit laughing. And they had to get a translator in at the benefits office today. Somebody came in speaking English. You've been listening to The World at 8. I'm Lynn Mozar, and I and the team at World at 8 and Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and a very safe weekend.